Broad daylight, Harlem church clothes. Two mobsters thought they were about to kidnap Bumpy Johnson's wife. 1 minute later, one of them was bleeding out on the sidewalk, and the Mafia realized they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. But here's the part history never tells you. She didn't shoot him because she was reckless. She shot him because her husband once told her something terrifying. He told her he couldn't protect her. And that moment turned her into something more dangerous than any gangster in Harlem. This is the story of how Bumpy Johnson's wife became a legend, and why the Mafia never touched her again. Broad daylight, Harlem, church clothes. Two mobsters thought they were about to kidnap Bumpy Johnson's wife. 1 minute later, one of them was bleeding out on the sidewalk, and the Mafia realized they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. But here's the part nobody tells you. She didn't shoot him because she was reckless. She shot him because her husband once told her something terrifying. He told her he couldn't protect her, and that moment turned her into something more dangerous than any gangster in Harlem. This is the story of how Bumpy Johnson's wife became a legend, and why the Mafia never touched her again. The sound of a gun being cocked is something Bumpy Johnson knew intimately. He'd heard it 47 times in his life. Twice it was his own gun pointed at someone who disrespected him. 45 times it was someone else's gun pointed at him. He'd been shot twice, survived both times. So when Bumpy walked into his Harlem apartment on February 7, 1949 at 11:43 p.m., tired, smelling like smoke and whiskey, and heard that familiar metallic click, his hand immediately went to his waistband where he kept a .45 automatic, but then he saw who was holding the gun. Mame, his wife. Standing in the middle of the living room, barefoot, still wearing her rehearsal dress from the club, tears running down her face, hands shaking so hard the gun barrel was drawing circles in the air. Bumpy's hand stopped halfway to his weapon. He didn't draw, didn't move, just stood there frozen, staring at the woman he loved, pointing a .38 revolver at his chest. "Mime," he said quietly. "Not scared, just careful." Her voice came out broken. "I need to know something." Bumpy slowly raised his hands, palms open, showing her he wasn't reaching for his gun. "Okay. Ask." The room was silent, except for Harlem traffic outside the window and her shaky breathing. "Can you protect me?" 4 words, but they carried the weight of everything that had happened in the last 3 weeks. The men following her to work, the phone calls at 2 a.m. with nobody on the other end, the stocking pinned to their front door with a switchblade. Mame wasn't asking if Bumpy was dangerous. She knew he was the most dangerous man in Harlem. She was asking if loving him meant she was already dead. Bumpy looked at her for a long time. Most men would have lied, would have promised safety, bodyguards, security, but Bumpy Johnson didn't lie to the woman he loved. "No," he said. "The gun didn't move." "Then what am I doing here?" Bumpy took 1 step forward. Slow, careful. "Because you're going to become someone they're too scared to touch." What happened next didn't just save their marriage. It created a legend. But to understand why, you need to understand who Mame Hatcher was before she became Mame Johnson. And you need to understand the night she met the most feared man in Harlem with blood still on his hands. Summer of 1948. Harlem wasn't just alive. It was dangerous. Not the kind of danger you read about in newspapers. The kind that happened in alleys, in basements, in back rooms where bodies disappeared and questions didn't get asked. Dutch Schultz was dead. He'd been killed in 1935, but his organization hadn't died with him. It fractured, splintered, turned into a dozen crews all fighting for control of Harlem's numbers racket, and standing in the middle of that war was Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. By 1948, Bumpy had already been running Harlem for over 16 years. He started as muscle for Madame Stephanie St. Clair, but by now, he wasn't just muscle. He was strategy. He was leadership. He was consequence. And in August of 1948, Bumpy made a decision that nearly got him killed. One of Schultz's old crews, led by a man named Vincent Malone, started shaking down Harlem businesses, demanding protection money, threatening shop owners who refused to pay. August 14th, 1948, 9:37 p.m. Vincent Malone and his crew were inside a warehouse on West 145th Street, counting stolen money. Bumpy Johnson walked in with 2 men. No announcement, no warning. "You've been collecting money in Harlem," Bumpy said. "Money that doesn't belong to you." Vincent smiled. That stupid smile men get when they think they're untouchable. What are you going to do about it, boy? Bumpy shot him in the knee. Vincent screamed, collapsed to the floor, clutching his shattered kneecap, blood pouring between his fingers. His two soldiers reached for their guns. Illinois Gordon and Junie Bird shot them both. Clean kills. Bumpy leaned down close to Vincent's face. Tell everyone Harlem's off limits, and if you use that word again, next bullet goes in your head. 3 minutes. That's all it took, but those 3 minutes started a war. Bumpy's hands were shaking when they got back to the car. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the knowledge he'd just started something that could spiral into something much bigger. Take me to Small's Paradise, he said. Small's Paradise was Harlem royalty. Duke Ellington played there. Billie Holiday sang there. It was where Black Harlem went to breathe. Bumpy walked in at 10:47 p.m., still wearing the same clothes from the warehouse, still smelling like gunpowder and blood. The club was packed. 200 people dressed sharp, drinking expensive whiskey, listening to jazz like the outside world didn't exist. Then he heard her. A voice from the stage, rich, deep, textured like velvet. She was singing Strange Fruit, that song about lynchings, about bodies hanging from trees, about pain most people tried not to look at. Bumpy looked up. She was young, maybe 24. Simple black dress, no jewelry. Red lipstick under the stage lights. Eyes closed, hands gripping the microphone stand like it was the only thing holding her to the earth. And for the first time in 3 years, Bumpy Johnson forgot about violence. When the song ended, the club exploded in applause. She smiled, took a small bow, and walked off stage. Bumpy found her at the bar. "You've been staring at me all night," she said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. "Hard not to," he replied. Her eyes dropped to his jacket collar. There was blood on it. "Your trouble," she said. "Most likely. And you came to a jazz club looking like you just walked out of a fight." "I did." She should have walked away. Any sane person would have. But instead, she looked him dead in the eyes and said, "So why would I waste my time talking to you?" Bumpy thought for a moment. "Because everyone else in this club is lying to you. The men buying you drinks. They're lying about who they are. I'm not. I'm exactly what I look like. A man who just walked out of something violent and came here because your voice made me feel human again." She studied him. "What did my voice make you feel?" "Human." That made her smile. Small, but real. "I'm Mame. Bumpy. I know who you are. And you're still talking to me." She shrugged. "I'm from North Carolina, Greensboro. I watched the Klan burn my neighbor's house down when I was 12. Stood in the street with my mother while they rode past on horses, torches in their hands, laughing. I've seen worse than bloodstains." Bumpy looked at her like he'd just found something rare. "One drink," she said. "That's all you get to prove you're not wasting my time." They talked for 2 hours. She told him about growing up in Greensboro, about the violence, about moving to New York to sing. He told her about Harlem, about the numbers racket, about Madame St. Clair. At 1 a.m., Bumpy walked her home. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "You're dangerous," she replied. "Everyone says so. They're not wrong. So why would I want to see you again?" "Because I won't lie to you," he said. "And in Harlem, that's rare." She smiled. "Come tomorrow night. I'm singing at 9. Bumpy showed up every night. By October, they were inseparable. By December, she'd moved into his apartment. By January 1949, every gangster, mobster, and hustler in New York knew Bumpy Johnson had a weakness. Her name was Mame Hatcher. The danger didn't come from strangers. It came from someone Bumpy thought he'd already dealt with. Michael Malone, Vincent's younger brother. After Bumpy shattered Vincent's knee, he never walked again. Spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair, bitter, broken, and full of hate. Michael blamed Bumpy for every second of it. The first threat came January 15th, 1949. Mame was walking home from rehearsal when she noticed a black Buick following her. 2 white men in suits staring at her through the windshield. She ducked into a corner store, watched through the glass. The Buick stayed. She slipped out the back door, walked 3 blocks out of her way, and finally got home. Her hands were shaking when she unlocked the door. She didn't tell Bumpy. Not that night. 3 days later, the phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Bumpy was in the Bronx. Mame was alone. She answered, breathing on the other end. Then a voice, white, Brooklyn accent. You sleep alone a lot, don't you? Her blood went cold. Who the hell is this? Someone who knows your husband isn't home. Someone who knows you're on the 5th floor of a building with one exit. Someone who's wondering how fast you can run in your nightgown. Her hand went to the nightstand drawer where Bumpy kept his gun. The voice laughed. Guns don't help when you're asleep, and everybody sleeps eventually. The line went dead. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in the living room with Bumpy's .45 in her lap, watching the door. When Bumpy came home at 6 a.m., he found her sitting there, exhausted, terrified. They called, she whispered. They know when you're gone. They know where I sleep. They're watching me. Bumpy's face went cold, not angry. Something worse. Tell me everything. When she finished, he walked into the bedroom, came back with a .38 revolver, and set it on the table. Today, he said, I'm teaching you how to use this. That afternoon, Bumpy took her to the basement of Small's Paradise. Ed Smalls owed Bumpy favors. He let them use the space. Bumpy lined bottles against a shelf, handed her the .38. Hold it like this. 2 hands. Don't lock your elbows. Her hands were shaking. I can't do this. Yes, you can. I'm a singer, Bumpy. I'm not like you. He stepped behind her, put his hands over hers, steadied the gun. You survived the Klan, moved to New York alone, built a career in clubs run by men who didn't respect you. That takes more strength than shooting a gun. I'm just teaching you the mechanics. They practiced for 3 hours. By the end, she was hitting 4 out of 5 bottles from 15 feet. Over the next 2 weeks, Bumpy made calls, reached out to contacts in Brooklyn and the Bronx. He narrowed the threats to Michael Malone. February 10th, 1949. Bumpy sent Michael a message. 3 of Michael's businesses burned down the same night. A social club in the Bronx, a warehouse in Queens, a numbers operation in Brooklyn. No one died. Buildings were empty. But the message was clear. The next day, Michael called for a meeting. They met in a diner in the Bronx. You burned down 3 of my operations, Michael said. Your men threatened my wife. She's not even your wife. She will be. And if any of your men come near her again, I'll burn down everything you have left. Michael stared at him. You think Harlem makes you untouchable? I don't think it, Bumpy said. I know it. Michael leaned forward. My brother's in a wheelchair because of you. He did that to himself. He disrespected Harlem. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Bumpy said. You just don't know it yet. Michael tried 3 more times to retaliate. Firebombs, bribes, bounties, none worked. Bumpy found him in a warehouse, broke both his legs with a baseball bat, and told him to leave New York. Michael left 3 days later. He never spoke Bumpy's name again. But even with Michael January 22nd, 1949, Mame came home from rehearsal and found something pinned to her apartment door. One of her stockings, the silk ones she wore on stage, pinned with a switchblade. Someone had been inside her apartment, taken it, left the knife. The message was clear. We can reach you whenever we want. That night she sat alone in the apartment, waiting. She went into the bedroom, opened Bumpy's drawer, and took out the .38. When Bumpy walked in at 11:43 p.m., he saw her immediately, gun in her hands, tears on her face, and he knew everything was about to change. Mame, he said quietly. She didn't respond, just aimed. I need to know something, she whispered. Can you protect me? And that's when Bumpy said the most dangerous truth of his life. No. Then what am I doing here? Because you're going to become someone they're too scared to touch. That night he didn't promise her safety. He promised her strength. And that changed everything. April 3rd, 1950, at 2:30 p.m. Mame was leaving Mount Olivet Baptist Church after choir practice when 2 men approached her. One tall, sharp suit, smiling, the other short, stocky face like a bulldog. Mrs. Johnson, the tall one said, we need to talk. She kept walking. Mrs. Johnson, he said again, stepping in front of her. This isn't a request. The shorter one moved behind her, cutting off her escape. What do you want? She asked. We want you to come with us. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have a choice. The shorter one grabbed her shoulder. Get your hand off me, she said. Or what? She reached into her purse. The tall one saw it. His hand went to his waistband. Don't! She pulled out her .38, pointed it at his chest. Get away from me. He froze. You're not going to shoot me. Not in broad daylight. You're right, she said. I'm not. Then she turned and shot the shorter one. The bullet hit his shoulder, spun him around, slammed him into a parked car. He screamed, blood everywhere. The tall one reached for his gun. Don't, she said. He looked at his partner, bleeding, looked at her gun, then ran, sprinted down Lenox Avenue like his life depended on it. Mame stood there, gun shaking in her hand. Then a black Cadillac screeched to a stop. Illinois. Gordon jumped out. Get in. She got in. Sirens wailed behind them. How did you know? She asked. Bumpy's had people watching you all day. Why didn't you stop them? Illinois smiled. Bumpy wanted to see if you could handle yourself. He looked at her in the mirror. You passed. By the time police arrived, nobody could describe the woman who shot the mobster, because in Harlem, you don't snitch on Bumpy Johnson's wife. That night, Tony Marinay sat in a back room in Little Italy. Across from him sat Vincent, the Chin Gigante. You tried to grab Bumpy Johnson's wife. The Chin said, she shot one of you, and you ran. Tony nodded. You embarrassed the family, the Chin said. Tomorrow, you go back. You finish the job. But Bumpy had eyes everywhere. Within 2 hours, he knew. He called Illinois Gordon. Find Tony Marinay and Paulie Scarletti. And when I find them, disappear them 3 days, then drop them at the New Jersey border, alive. Within 12 hours, they vanished. When they woke up, they were in a dark warehouse. Hands tied, Illinois Gordon holding a baseball bat. Nobody knows exactly what happened in those 3 days. But witnesses heard screaming. Hours of it. On the 4th day, Tony and Paulie were found at the New Jersey border, barely conscious, beaten so badly their own mothers wouldn't recognize them, but alive, because Bumpy wanted them to tell the Mafia what happens when you touch his wife. They went back to New York. When the Chin saw them, he laughed. You got beat up by a colored man and came back here for sympathy. Get out. They left New York that night. Never spoke Bumpy's name again. The story spread fast. Bumpy Johnson's wife shot a mobster in broad daylight. Then Bumpy disappeared the men who tried it. The message was clear. Touch her, and you're finished. 2 weeks later, Bumpy got a request for a sit-down from Vito Genovese himself. They met in Little Italy. My men tried to grab your wife, Vito said. She shot one. You disappeared both. You know what that looks like. Like I protect what's mine, Bumpy said. Vito smiled. That's what I like about you. They made a deal. No war, no interference. And if any Italian ever touched Mame again, Bumpy had permission to kill him and send flowers to the funeral. 1952, Bumpy Johnson was arrested. Federal narcotics conspiracy. 15 years. Mame sat in the courtroom. The judge read the sentence. She didn't cry. She just nodded at Bumpy. Once, he was sent to Alcatraz. And for the next 11 years, Mame Johnson ran Harlem. Not officially. Illinois Gordon and Junie Bird handled the day-to-day, but everyone knew who the real power was. Rivals thought Harlem was weak without Bumpy. They were wrong. 1953. A Brooklyn crew tried moving in. Mame sent a message. You have 24 hours to leave. They laughed, said a woman couldn't hold Harlem. Within 48 hours, their locations burned. They left. By 1958, Mame Johnson wasn't just Bumpy's wife. She was one of the most powerful figures in Harlem. When kids couldn't afford school supplies, she paid. When families couldn't pay rent, she arranged it. When police harassed black businesses, she made calls. She ran Harlem with the same code Bumpy did. Fear when necessary. Respect always. She visited Bumpy twice a year. At the first visit, he asked, "How's it going?" She smiled. We expanded into the Bronx. He stared at her. You're taking risks. I'm taking opportunities. You taught me that. I'm proud of you. She didn't cry, but her eyes filled. I told you I'd die with you, she said. That means I live for you too. 1963, Bumpy was released. He walked out of prison and flew to New York. Mame was waiting at the gate. Did you hold it together? He asked. I didn't hold it together, she said. I made it stronger. They ruled Harlem together for 5 more years. July 7th, 1968. Wells Restaurant, Harlem, 7:32 p.m. Bumpy Johnson collapsed. Heart attack. Dead before paramedics arrived. 62 years old. The King of Harlem. Gone. Over 10,000 people attended his funeral. Mame stood in black, accepting condolences. Not crying. She'd known this day was coming. She'd known it since the night she held a gun to his chest and asked if he could protect her. He said no, but he taught her to protect herself. Mame Johnson lived 41 more years, never remarried, never left Harlem. In 2008, a journalist asked her, "What was it like being married to Bumpy Johnson?" She smiled. "He never lied to me. That night I held a gun to his chest and asked if he could protect me. And he said no. That's when I knew I'd found the only man worth dying for. Because he told the truth, even when it was terrifying." Did you ever use that gun again? No. Word spread. After that, nobody touched me. She died in 2009 at 94. Her funeral was smaller than Bumpy's. But the people who came weren't there out of obligation. They were there because Mame Johnson had become a legend in her own right. Not as Bumpy's wife, as herself. A woman who shot a mobster in broad daylight. A woman who ran Harlem for 11 years alone. A woman who survived 41 years without the man she loved. And it all started with one question. Can you protect me? No, but I'll teach you to protect yourself. That's the story history won't tell you. The story of how Bumpy Johnson saved his wife's life by admitting he couldn't protect her. The story of how honesty became the deadliest weapon in Harlem. This is Bumpy Johnson, Decoding Dark History.